Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursdays Live with Chuk. Each week, we cover pressing topics that matter to you and your business. I'm Arianna Gonzales with Chuk Attorneys and CPAs, tuning in from our San Diego office, and joining me today are CPAs Ashleen from our Virginia office and Rupali from our New Jersey office. Hi there, Ashleen and Rupali, and welcome.
Thank you, Arianna.
So for today's topic, we're going to be talking about reporting of foreign holding and subsidiary entities. Just a quick disclaimer before we begin, I'd like to remind you all that we are live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and this conversation is for informational purposes only. It does not create an accountant-client relationship, so please comment any questions you have below or send us an email at info@chuk.com and we'll be happy to help you out. So let's get right into it. We have different tax return forms and schedules for different kinds of entities and situations. So we're going to touch base on entities having foreign owners and foreign subsidiaries. Can you please brief on the requirements of these sort of entities?
Thank you so much for the question, Arianna. So firstly, to talk about reporting requirements, the IRS has laid down various reporting requirements for the entities that have foreign subsidiaries or foreign owners. So these entities are required to file Form 5472 or 5471, depending on their ownership requirements. And both of these are information return forms that are required to file along with the income tax return. Just to give a brief about each form, Form 5471 is required to file by US taxpayers that have foreign ownership. And on the other hand, Form 5472 is required to file to report the transactions between the certain foreign-owned corporations and their foreign owners or related parties.
Those are great insights. So can we dive into Form 5471 a little bit more and who exactly is required to file this form? Are there any exceptions to filing this Form 5471?
Sure, Arianna. So Form 5471 is required to file by certain US citizens, resident aliens, or domestic corporations that have ownership in the foreign corporation must file Form 5471, depending on their ownership requirement, or let's say if they have any certain transactions with the foreign corporation. Typically, these are the individuals and entities that have at least 10% or more of the voting power or the 10% of the value of foreign corporation. So this is something, these are the requirements for filing Form 5471.
So are there exceptions to filing Form 5471? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, there are certain exceptions for filing Form 5471. Let's say if the entity is the domestic entity, it's not required to file Form 5471. And certain insurance companies that have elected under Section 953B, and they are treated like a domestic corporations are not required to file Form 5471. There are certain more exceptions. So please reach out to the CPA for a detailed exception list.
That's great to know that there are opportunities for exceptions and people should really look into that if they think they qualify for that. So can one of you touch on what is the purpose of Form 5471?
Certainly, Arianna. So, Rupali has wonderfully explained of what is Form 5471. The main purpose of this form is to provide the IRS with information about the ownership, financial operations, and other relevant details of the foreign corporations owned by US taxpayers, whether entities or individuals. This really helps IRS monitor the tax avoidance and gather information on US persons' foreign investments. It additionally helps in determining GILTI tax applicability. GILTI is Global Intangible Low Tax Income. It is a way to calculate a US company's foreign earnings so that it pays a minimum topic. This is a very detailed topic, so just wanted to briefly touch upon that.
I appreciate those insights, Ashleen. Can you elaborate further on filing requirement? What are the different categories for filers for Form 5471?
Right. As initially we spoke about, who needs to file Form 5471 and certain exceptions. Even in who needs to file this form, there are 5 main categories for which you need to determine which category you fall under. It could be category 1, where US shareholders of a foreign corporation in which they have acquired 10% or more of the voting stock, or where you've acquired stock and it has resulted in 10% ownership combined with your existing ownership. Or it could be another category, which is US shareholders who are officers or directors of the foreign corporation. And then there are certain other categories where you are US shareholders only for a specific time during the year. And you definitely need to consult your tax advisor, who can guide you on which category of form you need to fill on.
So when is the deadline for filing Form 5471? Can you guys give us some insight on that?
Sure, Arianna. So typically filing a form 5471 deadline is as similar to the income tax return filing deadline, including extensions. It's typically April 15th for individuals and corporations. However, if an individual is staying abroad, so they are like giving an additional time up to June 15th to file Form 5471.
That's great to know. So what happens if we don't file this form on time or we miss filing it in the past? Are there any penalties that we can incur for not filing it on time or inaccurately?
Yes, there are very severe penalties for non-filing or inaccurate filing of Form 5471. To begin with, there are like potential monetary penalties, and as well as depending on the period of non-compliance, plus depending on the number of foreign-owned corporations, the penalty may increase. So as far as the monetary penalties, $10,000 for not filing Form 5471 or Schedule O, or incomplete or inaccurate filing of Form 5471. Further, there's going to be a 10% reduction of foreign taxes credit available for non-filing of Form 5471. And lastly, and most important, there's going to be a statute of limitations for an indefinite period of time on the entire return.
So it's really important to file on time and accurately. Make sure you're talking to your CPA, because it sounds like the penalties can be pretty severe. So is there any relief for those who have not filed the Form 5471 on time?
Yes, so IRS have like various programs such as like voluntary disclosure or streamlined filing compliance procedures, wherein the individuals or corporations are given an opportunity to voluntarily declare or file Form 5471. However, before checking the applicability of this, it's advisable to consult the tax advisor or the CPA before getting into this voluntary disclosures.
So it sounds like there are quite a few steps to file this form. Can you talk about the benefits, why somebody should hire a professional CPA to file this Form 5471?
Certainly. As we've already discussed about the complexity of the form and the category of filers that needs to be determined, it's definitely not easy for a layman to, determine those and complete and file that form. So, and due to huge penalties involved for non-compliance and non-filing, it is definitely recommended for any taxpayer to consult their CPA when they think that they might require to file these forms.
I appreciate those insights, Ashleen. So for everyone who's just tuning in, we are live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. This conversation is for informational purposes only. It does not create an accountant-client relationship. So please comment any questions you have below or email us at info@chuk.com so we can help you out. So let's dive into Form 5472, another important tax form for foreign transactions. Can one of you talk about what is Form 5472 and how it differs from Form 5471?
Form 5472 is another very important form that we have to keep in mind when we talk about foreign transactions. But unlike Form 5471, which focuses on foreign corporations and their US shareholders, Form 5472 is used to report transactions between foreign-owned domestic corporations and their foreign owners. So any entity that has a foreign owner, they need to determine whether they need to file this form or not. It is used to provide information about transactions that can, possibly or potentially be used to shift income or deductions between the domestic corporation, that is the US entity, and its foreign owners. Hence, it's extremely crucial, for IRS to obtain the right information from the taxpayer.
That's really helpful to know. Can you touch on who exactly must file this Form 5472?
Yes, sure, Arianna. So Form 5472 is required to be filed by the certain foreign-owned domestic corporations and foreign owners or their related parties. And also, if there is any reportable transaction between these people or these entities, then it's required to file Form 5472.
So what exactly do we report on this form? Can you give examples of some such transactions, for example?
Sure, Arianna. So the details about Form 5472 reporting is as follows, like reporting corporation details, foreign-owned corporation details, like basically foreign entities or their foreign owners, plus the transaction details such as the amount involved, parties involved, and the description of services. So some of the examples of reportable transactions are like sale or purchase of tangible property, sale, purchase, or licensing of intangible properties, loans or advances given, then rent, royalties, or fees paid for any technical, managerial, or consulting services. To understand the details or details about the reportable transactions between your entities, please reach out to the tax advisor, and so that they can guide you accordingly what to be reported on Form 5472.
Yeah, it sounds like there are quite a few items to report on that form. Is there a deadline to file this Form 5472?
Yes, it is very similar to the deadline of Form 5471 with the due date of the corporation tax return. Usually a corporation tax return is due by April 15th. And if you've taken an extension, then October 15th. We just have to make sure that this form, it's a separate return, but it has to be filed with the tax return. It cannot be filed independently by the due date of the corporation tax return and with that form itself.
So what happens if a corporation, for example, has multiple foreign owners? Do they need to file multiple Form 5472s, or how does that work?
Yes, if any domestic corporation has multiple foreign owners, then first thing is we need to determine whether they qualify or the percentage of their ownership exceeds the filing requirement. If it does, then yes, for every foreign owner, there has to be a separate form to identify the transactions between the two, the corporation and the foreign owner or related party.
That's really helpful to know. So what are the possible implications of not accurately reporting foreign holdings and subsidiary entities? Do you guys have some insight on that?
Yeah, Arianna. So like I mentioned earlier as well, that non-filing of these forms would definitely, involve a lot of rigorous penalties. So in order to avoid those penalties, it's better to, understand the transaction details and consult the tax advisor to understand the transaction and then report accordingly in order to avoid those penalties.
That's great insight, Rupali. So how often do the regulations and standards for these forms change?
It really depends, Arianna. Every year we have instructions released out for these forms or any IRS tax form for that matter. So, we need to make sure that we are updated with those. And that's one of the most important role of having a professional CPA firm looking into this, because then you make sure that, the instructions are up to date. Your form is filed accurately, which is very important. And, just this year only, if I, look back into the last tax season, this Form 5471 had instructions which were released by IRS in about January of this year. And the return had to be filed by March or April, depending on the requirement. And the form was not finalized until the last week. So, it's very important to keep all those in track, and track of what changes are being implemented by IRS. That's all.
That's really good to know. So we are reaching our end, but we do have a live question. So let's take that and then we can go ahead and close out. So how can I ensure that I'm staying compliant with the IRS when it comes to reporting foreign holdings and subsidiary entities? Do you have insight on that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Arianna. So whenever there is a foreign investment or an entity is planning to invest in some other entity, so it's very important that we look into the reporting requirements of Form 5471 and Form 5472. And, it's very important that these requirements are looked into, and to understand the requirements in detail, please consult the CPA.
Also, Arianna, I would like to add here, just to what Rupali has mentioned. Anytime, and this we advise to all our, clients as well. Anytime you do something out of the box, especially related to foreign, right? Whether it's an investment, whether you are onboarding investors, whether you have a foreign bank account, mutual funds, anything. My first recommendation would be, as a firm, that go ahead, consult your advisor, make sure there are multiple forms other than the two we talked about today, right? There are multiple forms that are needed to comply with foreign reportings. So hence, the first step would be to disclose to your tax advisor and then take the right steps accordingly and plan accordingly, that what this means for you as an individual or your domestic entity who might be implicated by these forms.
Those are great insights. Thank you so much, Ashleen and Rupali. I really appreciate your time and sharing all of your insights with us. This does bring us to the end of our conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And to stay up to date, please subscribe and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If this video was helpful, please press the like button and turn on the notifications so you can be notified of our next upload. If you have any questions or suggestions, please reach out to us anytime at info@chook.com, and make sure to join us back here next week for more pressing topics that truly matter to you and your business. Until next time, stay safe and take care. Thank you, everyone.